Welcome to another episode of Corporate CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Today, we'll be talking about how to have an effective revenue strategy. And joining us to contribute to the conversation is Mona Akmal. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I have been in the tech industry for over 2 decades, started my career as an engineer at Microsoft, and then moved into product management and general management, helping build services like OneDrive, and then went on my tour of duty, helping three very different CEOs build three very different companies like Code.org, Zulily, and Amperity, and started Falcon, which is a go-to-market intelligence software as a SaaS company a couple of years ago. Super excited to be here.
And so tell me what led you to your interest in go-to-market being such an emphasis in engineering?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the intersection of engineering and business, because I think when you look at what makes good engineers and good product managers, it's all about efficiency, and it's all about balancing the entire equation with analytical thinking and being able to process lots of different variables to optimize an engine, right? Mm-hmm. And I bring a very similar sort of mindset to go to market and a revenue engine, because at the end of the day, just like any engine, it has variables, inputs, and it produces ultimately an output, which is revenue. So we really think about revenue and go-to-market as an engineering challenge to address. And I think that has resulted in some pretty unique insights and more efficient ways to generate revenues in the corporate context.
And what do you think the biggest challenges facing organizations in the go-to-market space are right now?
Yeah, so I think that the few challenges that I see, the first one is a siloed point of view. So, sales is stuck in acquiring new logos. Marketing is stuck in brand and demand generation. Customer success is focused on customer success. But what we're not doing is thinking about net revenue retention, which has increasingly become the most important metric and the most important health indicator of a business, right? And net revenue retention has to incorporate things like the cost of acquiring customers, the cost of retaining customers, expansion, churn, risk. And so this siloed point of view on how we think about go-to-market ends up causing a lot of problems downstream. So often we'll see companies do a phenomenal job of acquiring customers, but have really bad unit economics because their customer acquisition cost is prohibitive and is not in line with the revenue and the contract values of those customers. Or leaky funnels, we've all been there, right? We do a great job of bringing customers through the door, but we have no idea how to retain them, and we're not even able to recover cost before they walk out the other door. And that's really not a business that's going to be durable. The second big challenge that I see is teams getting very focused on execution and not necessarily thinking longer term, because the market that we operate in, you are pretty much redundant every 5 years. Technology is developing at a faster and faster rate. So, if you developed some IP and built a business around it and were a single product company 5 years ago, it might be a great way to get to your first billion, but it's not going to get you the next 5 billion. And unfortunately, the circumstance here is if you're not moving forward, you're actually moving backwards. And so short-term thinking and execution focus rather than long-term thinking and strategic focus, I think, ends up being another big challenge. And then the third big challenge I've seen over and over again is not really understanding what the purpose of culture and operating principles is. Culture is not a religion. It's not an ethical conversation. It's actually a conversation about how a resource, which is human beings, work together in order to achieve business objectives. Depending on what stage your company is in and what your business's objectives are, your culture should really be aligned with that, right? And so when a company is in infancy, the type of culture that you want to have and the way you want to work is very different from when you are a business that is an incumbent and is being threatened from a lot of competition. And so really thinking about culture as a living and breathing thing that is not, warm and fuzzies and something that HR and marketing think about and put in a slide deck, but rather a very powerful tool to align how you work in order to achieve your business objectives given the situation you are in at that point as a company.
So let's start with maybe a broken process. How do you even go about diagnosing that you have a problem, and then what really is the root cause of that problem?
Give me a little bit of clarity. I
Well,
missed the first one.
yeah. So you're talking about how companies are having these challenges with, say the siloed departments, or
Mhm.
the cost of acquisition, the cost of retention. So how do you even know if you have a go-to-market problem? And
Ah,
then once you analyze, assess that yes, you do, how do you figure out what the actual root cause?
Absolutely. That's a great point. So I would say, to me, my spidey sense that there is a silo problem in action happens when you ask two teams that are supposed to be like this why they are unable to hit their numbers, and all the answers end up being in the other team's work. So
Mm,
typically, this shows up quite a lot with marketing and sales. Sales will often, when they are unable to hit revenue goals, say it's because marketing isn't generating the right top of funnel. And when marketing is put in that defensive position, their response is, we're providing great top of funnel, but our sales team doesn't know how to close deals. They're not doing a good job of
mm,
taking the demand that we're generating and turning it into revenue. So usually conflict at the leadership level between senior leaders can be a
mm,
pretty good indicator. And I don't mean there should be healthy conflict, but when
mm.
there's a lack of accountability in any department and its ability to deliver results, I would consider that a pretty strong signal that there is a problem of silos. How you would root cause the problem, I think, is first and foremost, CEOs and founders and COOs and CFOs need to do a good job of having a great data strategy so that there
Mhm.
is actually a system of truth. Often, for instance, I'll give you an example. In my company, I don't review progress in slide decks because any numbers that are shown in slide decks can be changed and munged. I want to
Mm,
look at the numbers in a system of truth where they are the closest representation of what actually happened, as opposed to the storytelling that happens post event, right? For instance, if you are using a CRM to track what pipeline you have, your CRM is the source of truth of how much pipeline you have, right? And
mhm,
so being able to go to the source of truth is really important. So I would say, in terms of diagnosing, one, the neutral parties, which are usually CEO, CFO, and COO in a company, should have a strong data strategy so that they have a version of the story that is independent of what they're being fed in board meetings and monthly business
mhm,
reviews and weekly business reviews. The second is to have shared OKRs. Having shared objectives and key results across teams where you believe there are sources of tension. The third is actually bottoms up feedback. I'm a big believer that in order to figure out what root cause is, you need to look at data that is digital, and you need to generate data that is through conversation at all levels of an organization. The perspective of an average sales rep and an average marketing manager or campaign manager on what's going on will give you insight into the root cause that is potentially very different from whether you are from, perhaps, if you're talking to the VP of demand generation and a sales leader, versus the version of the truth getting from the CRO and the CMO. All versions of the truth are valid. I do firmly believe most people are good and are always giving you the best information that they know. But
mm.
all of those are opinions. So if you can triangulate the different stories, you start to see a more fuller picture of what's really going on.
And then, so you talked a lot about data, and you mentioned even OKRs, which that would be an interesting topic in of itself. But I guess what are some of those? One of the things that you focus on, you get what you focus on, right? So if you aren't focusing on the right things, you might get poor results or even unintended consequences, right? Something working, against you. So what are kind of your recommendations around the key metrics for go to market that organization should be focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, unfortunately, what I see happen often is people create too many metrics
Mhm.
and then they don't look at any of them. So I think, and honestly, the ones that they look at are output metrics like revenue.
Mhm.
I'm not interested in output metrics because output metrics are the result of the things that you do. I care more about input metrics or the key drivers of the business. So, in a go to market function, what are your inputs? Who you are targeting? What are
Mhm.
your accounts and customers? Are they ideal customers or not? How you are targeting them, which is through your sales development team, your account executive team, and marketing programs, some of which are digital marketing, some are field marketing. These are really the levers of a revenue engine, at least for new business, right? So if we scope it down to just new business for a moment, I am interested in the marketing activities and the ROI on campaigns and channels. I am interested in sales development activities, and conversion numbers are really more important than counts, right? So I don't care as much about how many meetings we're booking. I care about how many meetings are converting into opportunities and how many opportunities are then turning into customers. So
Mhm.
conversion rates become really, really important, and I look at rep productivity. So, what is the fully loaded cost of a rep, and what is the output of a rep? Because if my rep productivity metrics are off, then that usually hides inefficient revenue generation mechanisms. And, over the last year, we've all seen tremendous layoffs. And to me, most of the time, those layoffs are happening in go to market teams because people hired like crazy to generate more revenue instead of focusing on really understanding how to make their existing levers, which is channels, campaigns, sales development reps, and account executives, efficient and productive. So I guess I'll summarize. Look at the activities and the efficiency metrics of your inputs, and that will give
Mhm.
you the leading sense of where your outputs are going to be down the line.
And so obviously you're only as good as your data, and
Mhm.
data is reliant on people. So,
Yes.
what are some of your, I guess, recommendations around getting adoption to, being able to have that effective data?
Absolutely. So I would say, first of all, there's a big misconception around data that in order for us to use data, it has to be perfect, right?
Mm.
It doesn't. I've never met a perfect data set, and I've been in the industry for 23 years now. Data has to be directionally accurate. If it is
Mm.
directionally and consistently off by the same amount, it doesn't matter. It's a little bit like your weighing scale, right? If your weighing scale is off by 7 pounds, but it's consistently off by 7 pounds, who cares? You still know what the trend looks like. Are you going up or are you going down, right?
Mm.
So that's one. I would say another is investing in operations is really, really important. Go to market teams really need to focus on investing in marketing operations and revenue operations that is very focused on data cleanliness. And then third is make people's lives easier. Often the biggest root causes of why data ends up being not clean or there are gaps in data are because people are being cheap. They're not enriching their
Mm.
data, they're not spending that money. That money is so worth it, because if you decide not to, for instance, enrich your CRM with company data, or contact level, title, persona, job description data. You cannot do any analysis to figure out who your ideal customers are. One would posit that if you can't figure out who your ideal customers are in a data-driven way, you're going to have a really inefficient revenue engine, because you will be spraying and praying all kinds of customers out there, hoping that something sticks, right? So really focusing on enriching data where possible, that ROI is totally worth it. And then second, I would say is, a lot of activity data, like sales reps, they do a lot of their work in email. Instead of forcing them to go and then manually log their activity in a CRM, invest in the tools that will automatically do this for them, because at the end of the day, their job is to book revenue. Their job is not to update Salesforce, right? So if you can really enable your reps and the frontline workers to as much as possible automatically generate data and have it move to the right places, your data can get to a pretty good spot. The last thing I will say is, I see a lot of effort and investment being put in BI tools and, massive Snowflake licenses and data engineers and a bunch of data infrastructure being built and so on. This DIY mindset has to change. There are a lot of phenomenal tools out there that can help you get insight a lot faster. And honestly, I have not met yet a reason for doing it yourself and building it yourself, other than the fact that we've all somehow realized we must own our data. And therefore, we need to go purchase Snowflake and hire a massive data team. And 6 months later, they'll give us one Tableau dashboard, right? So really, where you can, buy. And if you really have a sound reason, then build.
So, you mentioned the investing, and I know you have some obviously interest in AI. So let's talk about AI trends within go-to-market.
Yeah. So, we're seeing a lot of really interesting things happening with AI in go-to-market. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is machine learning and artificial intelligence applications only work when large amounts of training data are available, generally speaking. And in the past 5 years, we have digitized so much of our communication within go-to-market on how brands communicate with prospects, whether that's emails, whether that's phone calls. Everything's recorded and everything's digitized, which means that a lot of digital data exists for AI to then be able to do interesting things. So the trends that I'm particularly excited about are, one, what we're seeing with conversational intelligence and chat GPT, right? Which is, how can we learn how to have better conversations? The point is not to make human beings irrelevant. It is to almost provide coaching at a level that is unprecedented. So I'm very excited about that, because even now, human beings are purchasing software, at least in a business context, by interacting with other human beings, because these are often purchases that require some confidence building, some shared trust, and that's something humans do a really good job of, right? So trends in conversational intelligence and coaching that are driven by AI are particularly interesting. Second, data governance and being able to do outlier detection so that your data quality improves. For instance, if a sales rep fat fingers the expected amount for a deal to be 10 million, when your average contract value as a business is 10,000, clearly that's an error. Being able to not only identify errors like that, but correct them so that your data starts to get better and better and better. And correcting it could simply be nullify that field and say, there's no value here, right? So that your metrics don't go all over the place, where now all of a sudden your average contract value looks super different because you have 3 deals with data bugs in them. So using AI to do anomaly detection and data cleaning is particularly interesting. And then the third thing I would say is what I call AI GTM intelligence tools, which are essentially looking at massive amounts of activity data and able to pinpoint to you the key places that you need to focus on as a go-to-market team in order to optimize your revenue engine. Whether that is identifying channels and campaigns you should be investing more time and effort in, whether that is decoding what makes a rep great and being able to replicate it, whether that is being able to identify customers that are likely to churn early so that you can do something about it before you lose that revenue. So those would be the three areas where AI applications and go-to-market seem very promising.
And where do you suggest, like, how they companies determine where they're going to get the best ROI among all these AI tools? Because I feel like a lot of the ones I see, they're investing in the automated, emails and stuff, which, I'm not sure that's the best, because to your point, they're not necessarily having the best conversations. It's that, just put it out there and see who comes back. And so,
Yes.
yeah, how do you decide where's the most effective use of those dollars?
Yeah, so I would say that, that is very business specific, right? There
Mm-hmm.
isn't a one size fits all. However, the answer really is to invest in strategic revenue operations. And by strategic revenue operations, what I mean is uh, putting people in revenue operations and compensating people that actually come from a strategy consulting sales background, even people who have sold
Mm-hmm.
before, people who have marketed before. What we're seeing is, 90% of revenue operations are people that were Salesforce admins and they grew up in the revenue operations. So they are more process people and they are more sort of technical implementation people. They don't actually understand the go-to-market engine in its entirety, which is why their focus ends up being very tactical. This goes to the first point that I had made, which is strategic versus tactical versus
Mm-hmm.
execution focused, right? If your revenue operations team is more interested in what fields you should have in Salesforce, that's the tactical part. Like you should
Mm-hmm.
have a Salesforce admin for that. Strategic revenue operations should have at least 20 to 30% of their time dedicated to identifying what are the best applications of machine learning to drive efficiency within an organization and how they should go figure out what is appropriate for them. One, they have to have a keen understanding of the business problems that their go-to-market team is facing and where the biggest opportunities for improvement are. And for that, you need to have a good data strategy. Second, a lot of venture capitalists that I've worked with have these CXO programs, which I
Mm-hmm.
would encourage everyone to consider, because often venture capitalists are on the bleeding edge of technology and
Mm.
can be a really good access point into technology that is not yet a household name, but is ready enough that it is a viable business. So for strategic RevOps leaders to join these CXO programs with the top 10 VCs, because that means at least once a quarter, they will get a parade of startup founders like myself, tell them what is happening in the market, and then they have access to all this knowledge that you wouldn't get in the Gartners and the Forresters of the world, because by the time you're in Gartner, like it's already a little bit too late.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit, I guess, about your company and what is the problem you're trying to solve then.
Yeah, so the problem we're trying to solve is fundamentally one of how you use data. When I was at Zulily, um, which is an e-commerce company targeting young moms, um, we would send incredibly personalized outreach to our customers every day that literally looked like someone had handwritten that email for you. But obviously,
Mm-hmm.
there was no human being involved. And the way that was done was we had operationalized all of our data about a customer to drive this hyper personalized outreach, which helped us be a phenomenal revenue engine. And that was my inspiration. And I wanted to apply that to the go-to-market space, which to me, honestly, B2B SaaS companies are still stuck in the early 2000s on how they use data, right? They're using data to report on the business and predominantly look at, their pipeline charts and build board decks. They're not really using data to make decisions every day. So our thesis is Falcon is a go-to-market intelligence tool. It does three things. One, it joins all product, marketing, and sales data, removes all those silos, joins it at the account level and at the user level. And second thing it does is it derives insights about what are the tactics that are working and what are the tactics that are not working. How do we optimize the revenue engine? And then third is to push those insights into where go-to-market teams are working, which is email, which is Slack, which is Salesforce, Outreach, SalesLoft, Marketo, HubSpot, so that the insight is it's available where the person who's doing the job is so that they can make a better decision today. And we believe that's really what's going to drive efficiency in the revenue engine for SaaS companies.
Well, this has been a really enlightening conversation, Mona. I'd just love to hear kind of the things you want to leave top of mind for our audience today.
Yeah, I would say the first thing I would want people to consider is just reflect on whether your objectives and key results as a senior leader are representative of a silo or not. If you do not have key results that are really focused on driving company objectives, then you are part of the problem, not the solution. So really try to de-silo yourself. As an example, if you're a marketing leader and your only key result is on pipeline and not revenue, perhaps reconsider that, because at the end of the day, it's about revenue, not pipeline. So try to de-silo. And instead of looking externally, focus on what you can do, because you can only control yourself. You can't control other people. And then the second thing I would want to leave people with is invest in a good data strategy and really spend, if you're a senior leader, you should be spending 50% of your time on what is happening 2 years from now and 50% of your time on what's happening 2 weeks from now. So really strike that balance effectively.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mona. How do folks learn more about what you do in your company, and how do they find you?
Yeah, we would love to hear from you. Just, reach out to us at falcon.ai. It's Falcon with a K, FALKON.ai, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty responsive. Just Mona Akmal.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And to our audience, until next time, keep your organizations healthy.
Hey!